Hello, everyone. Debra Prinselaar, your Director of Film. I want to welcome and introduce you to Rishi Kapoor, the man behind Paus TV, and it's a relatively new to the market streaming platform for independent filmmakers, which is exactly what all of our students are, Rishi. Now, Paus TV is offering a streaming slot to us in film production at Salford, in order to get our Festival of the Short Film out to people online. I'm going to say sending it around the world because, well, why not?
Yep.
Thanks so much for joining us for the festival, Rishi.
No, thank you, Deborah.
A little bit about yourself, very briefly. You've worked at Warner Brothers, NBC Universal, and Sony in strategy and sales, and now you've set up this streaming service, Paus TV. It's spelt PAUS.TV. What is Paus?
So exactly as you described it, it's a streaming service, both on demand and live. And we do things differently to every other streaming service because we enable audiences to watch it for free, but leave a tip of their choice to any film and any filmmaker they want at any time. And we only keep a small amount. Most of it goes back to the filmmaker directly into their pocket so they can keep earning more money and making better stuff, essentially. And as you mentioned, my background before this was based in streaming, essentially. You know, I had my entire career in streaming and new media, from my first role at Sony Pictures through to Universal Studios. It changed slightly at Warner Brothers, was in a more strategic role. And then I did some work at Disney and BBC. And so I've kind of been all over the streaming space and recognized a huge market failure for independent filmmakers, and also market failure in the way that the internet was being monetized. So that's essentially what Paus is. We select great filmmakers, they upload their films for free, audiences can watch it for free, no adverts, no monthly payments, no set payments. You give what you want, when you want, to who you want. And we've experienced some magical things with it.
I'm intrigued at the name. Why did you choose Paus TV?
Essentially, we want to hit the reset button on the way the industry has worked for the last several years. And we want to put a stop to set payments. We want to put a massive stop to intrusive advertisement. We want to put a stop to personal data being shared with big platforms. We want to put a stop to unfair monetization. And so we don't want to call it stop. So we called it Paus. Let's pause all these things, hit the reset button, and actually bring something out that is fair for both the user and the audience.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
Yes.
Your breadth of experience so far has brought you to this point in your career. And anyone studying the present government's approach to arts will wonder how the arts generally, and we're talking about film and film specifically, can be sustained as an industry. There's a negative approach to the whole thing now. What are your thoughts about that?
So I think the arts is a completely fragmented marketplace, which means most of the money goes to the few individuals, when there's a lot of people who contribute to the creative economy as well. I also think that as consumers, I would argue we invest far less per GDP. I'm an economist by nature, so I kind of speak in economic terms sometimes. But I think we put in too little money for the creative and the culture that we receive from the arts, be it free museums that we can walk into, all the way through to free content on ad-based platforms. I think that we pay too little. And I think any rational consumer, if you gave them the choice to pay a bit more to get far more output, most people would, because people, I think, inherently understand how important culture and creativity is to them. It's handed to people on a plate. And by default, a lot of the studios that I worked with were moving towards a franchise model. So content was feeling increasingly commoditized and repetitive, and independent culture was dying out. And I think because the monetization and the model and the economics behind independent content, it just isn't there. We've built a system around big commercial products, a system around rewards for the big blockbusters, for the big franchises. There's ample opportunities for us to go to cinema. Well, there used to be ample opportunities for us to go to cinema, to buy merchandise, to to download games, all within a world of a multi-billion-dollar franchise. We didn't have the same opportunities to give back to independent creators, and we're trying to pave the way for people to do that. So I think the creative industries, that there's a huge market failure, and I also think in terms of supply into that industry, and we'll probably talk about it a bit more depth, but supply into the creative industries is slightly flawed as well. I mean, it's so important to our economy and it contributes so much. I think that we have a real issue with drawing people into it.
I'm interested, you've already mentioned the fact that we used to go to the cinema and that things have changed. Now, we all kind of know about the phoenix rising from the ashes, and the COVID year that we've had has been a disaster for so many people.
Yeah.
And yet, where have we all turned? We haven't been able to go to the restaurant or the pubs or bars or go out and see friends and things. And so we're looking for things to entertain us. And I think there's been a great swell of opportunities for people to make things, but also for us all to see what people are making. So,
yeah,
the outcome of this COVID year could actually be positive for the industry. Do you think?
I think you would hope so, right? I think what COVID has really done is accelerate changes that might have taken like 10 or 20 years and accelerate it within the space of a year. And I think one of those trends was people enhancing their cultural experience that they receive online. And I think that more time people spend at home, the more they've opened up to consuming content in different ways. And I do think, and we've spoken about this before, that I truly think that the arts and creativity has been a lifeline for many people. So I think, hospitals and frontline workers, NHS teachers, anyone in the public sector and frontline has saved people's lives and have saved people who are sick. And obviously, grocery and retail has fed people, but what's kept people sane and happy? And it's been, what's kept the well people well? And it's been the arts, it's been the creative sector. People can't go to restaurants or bars, and in many circumstances can't play sports, community sports, and so we've all lent on the arts, be it music or streaming. And so I think now is a powerful time to be in the creative space and be able to leverage a business out of your passion.
I'm sure you'd agree with this, that young people are being turned away from the arts.
Yeah.
There's a great emphasis on technical training now. The government is changing the whole approach to education, and you've mentioned before, I'm going to take these words out of your mouth, that if you're a parent and you've got a child that wants to be a lawyer and a child that wants to be a scriptwriter, well, you're going to go rah for the lawyer because they'll make money and they'll be able to afford a mortgage. And a scriptwriter, you just don't know. It's a really tentative industry. How do we stop young people kind of being incentivized, if you like, to move away from the arts?
Yeah, I actually might come back to you on this one. I'll give my opinion on it. I think the reason why we root for the more traditional services, be it law or medicine or engineering, is because the economic structure around it is just more stable. So if you want to be a lawyer, there's loads of opportunities for you to earn money in that, and so that's why we're pushed towards that, be it socially or politically, whichever way you want to do it. Even university funding, I suppose, is probably highly geared towards trying to push people into those more traditional academic subjects rather than the arts. But if you look at it from an economic point of view, the creative sector's pretty much always outgrown every other sector in the UK. So let's only talk about the UK here. The creative sector's always outgrown other sectors. I think it was like double what auto is. I mean, someone's going to probably quote me on that and say, no, you're wrong, it wasn't. But it was growing faster than auto. It's certainly growing faster than the entire UK economy in terms of growth rate. And it is, think of the films and the content. I have a bias towards films, but it's the same probably could said music and theatre. How much of a massive export it is, James Bond, Harry Potter, huge franchises are made here, plus a lot of independent content's made here, plus a lot of musicians and music comes from here and exported all over the world. And so Why we encourage people to not go into one of the fastest growing parts of the UK economy, I don't know. But if I was to hazard a guess, I think because it's the market failures around the amount audiences invest in consuming culture. And I think it's that notion that culture should be free.
Yeah, that is a problem, isn't it? And I think because a lot of culture is free, you go on your phone, you go on your tablet, and there's, you know, you can go into YouTube and lots of stuff is on there. It's the quality of it, though, isn't it? That's the issue, and you can't produce quality without a bit of a budget.
Yeah.
You know, money but does make the world go round. If we can come back to Pause TV and the monetization of talent,
yeah,
how would our students benefit from your incentive, Pause TV?
What we're trying to do is empower a much greater economy around good content, high quality content. Doesn't mean someone has to be established. So the way we do it is through our discretionary tipping system. We have our on-demand version, so people can watch Pause on any device, Android or iOS, at any time, tablets, desktops. We have our web version as well. It's a great selection of curated content, and you pay for whatever content you want to pay for, and you determine your own value. We also have our live events as well, which we did in response to COVID, but didn't think that, you know, cinemas would close down at the rate they did, and then just a lot of them not reopen. So it's been a really good lifeline for independent filmmakers who want to do a screening, even if it's just friends and family. They can use Pause to host their own live screening, and it is global. When we hold a screening event, we always assume that it's just going to be friends and family, but we have people from Israel and India and Dubai tuning into someone's film that otherwise wouldn't have got there. Essentially, we just allow people to pay. We give filmmakers the tools to monetize from their audience directly, which is a very, very different model from the current way of doing it, which is mainly through ad revenue, which is I need to get millions of people to watch my content. And even if I get millions of people, I might earn a couple £100. And you're right, you know, you need money to fund the creative economy. It can't sustain itself just on being free all the time and getting people to dip into their savings or ask their grandmother to dip into her savings to crowdfund content. We have to create a better business around independent films. So that's the way we do it. For your students who are coming in, I'll give you a quick anecdote. We had a film that we premiered, I think now about 10 days ago. We put it on Pause, and within a couple of hours, it earned like almost $5,000 in tips from people.
Amazing.
And these are people who can just pay nothing. I think it was within the first hour, it was 4,400. It's now kind of skirting the edges of around $5,000. I say dollars, it was a US film. And
Girl on the Side.
Girl on the Side, yeah.
I watched that. It was very good, and so much going on in a very short space of time.
Absolutely.
You know, you're a great resource actually for our students, in that there is a fantastic selection of different kinds of films, which, you know, can really give inspiration, I think, when you see how they're done, let alone earning money from them as well. So
absolutely,
it sounds like a really good alternative crowdfunding scheme.
And the important thing with that particular film is that it was the filmmaker's first film, and she didn't necessarily have a track record. She was an Academy Award-winning director. She did just pull in favors from friends and families and people who cared about her vision, and so had the same resources as your students will have right now.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to the kind of market failure and the economics. 4,000, 5,000, 3,000, wherever it might be. And we have filmmakers earn, you know, anywhere between 600 and $1.5 grand. Some people will earn just a couple of pounds. Some will earn way more, depending on the film and the way they promote it. But if you think of, just take that upper end example, she's earning as an independent filmmaker within that short space of time more than a QC or a doctor. We've changed the economics because we gave her the tools to be able to do that. If it wasn't for Pause, she would have done the same thing, which is put it on YouTube or Vimeo or wherever it might have been. The same people would have watched it, and she would have walked away with nothing. And that's the status quo. That's how people have done it for the last 20 years, which is, I'm just going to put it up for free. As many people can watch it as they want, and I will walk away with nothing and then figure out how I'm going to fund my next creative vision. And we're changing that dynamic completely.
This is a question you might edit out, because I'm not sure, I don't know if you know what the answer is, but if a student or a young filmmaker an independent filmmaker shows their film on Pause TV, sometimes you're not then permitted to submit your work to festivals, are you, if it's already been seen publicly?
Yeah.
And so there is a risk, I suppose, that once you've shown it on Pause TV, you then can't submit it to festivals.
So we have our live events, and so the festivals that we've spoken to have all said that to hold a screening with Pause before it gets to a festival is fine, because they can still class it as premier status. Now, obviously, there's thousands of festivals and they'll have different takes on this.
Yeah.
I think most of them probably more lenient now that cinemas are closed down. You can't actually get together with friends and family to host a screening. And even the strictest ones, because we can have private screenings on Pause as well, which means we can password protect it and have not an entry fee because it's free, but we put a restriction on people entering, which means you can host a live event with Pause, walk away with quite a bit of money that could then fund your entry into festivals.
Yes.
Go through the festival circuit. As soon as off the festival circuit, it can then go back onto the Pause on-demand version for the millions of people who couldn't attend that festival and watch your film can now watch it at their own convenience in their own time. And the great thing, festivals are a great thing, but a single consumer obviously can't attend every single festival, and it's just difficult. And it's more difficult now, right? It's just more difficult now than ever before to actually be able to go to a festival. And so, we provide that long tail value for a content creator.
Well, it's going to carry on for some time, I'm afraid. So, I mean, it's actually Pause TV is in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Can I ask you a quick question about the stigma thing around the arts?
Yes.
Academically?
Yeah.
What's your view on that? Why do you think that? Obviously, you get a good footfall of students who are interested in the creative sector and come to university and come out with some great skills, but arguably it's a tough choice. And then when they go out into the world, it's scarier going out into the world having done a degree in the creative sector than having just come out with a law degree or medicine, when it's probably just the revenues are more guaranteed. Why do you think that stigma still exists, given the strong nature of the creative sectors?
I tell you, there is an issue at the moment with the government, in that the government judges the success of a course, a university course, and it's based on how soon a graduate can get a job, how much money they earn within 18 months of graduating, and the success of the career. Now, I think industry has a lot to answer for, the arts industry, particularly the film industry, what we're talking about, but broadcast industry as well. There are opportunities for young people who come out of university, but the pay isn't great. And if it's £18,000 a year, say, if you're going to get a job as a runner or kind of joining a team or joining a crew, and everybody has to start at the bottom. We know that. You don't graduate from university and then become a DOP, or a producer or a director, unless you set up your own company, and then there are risks involved. But so I think the industry has a lot to answer for, and I think they ought to do more graduate trainee schemes as well. They ought to, because it's a hard job to get a job for our students. Now, those that persevere are those that have something to say. If people have a story to tell, or their heart is strong in an area, and they love creating, and they're doing it in their weekends, and they're doing it in their evenings and in their holidays, that they will go far. Those that love it. We might get students that come in at the first year who have done quite well in their media studies, for example, at college, and they're thinking this might be quite nice. And what we do as lecturers is try and instill a thirst and a hunger in them, that they have such a good experience learning, that they emerge just with a determination to tell a story, to visualize a poem, to make music videos, to kind of use cameras, could even be their phone. I know they have saying that, but it could be their phone. Actually, little side bubble, I think students really hate to hear that it doesn't really matter what equipment you use because they love the equipment that we've got, but actually it's the story you're telling. And if you've got a good story to tell, and if it's heartfelt, then you go far. So there are two things that I'm saying. Is one, that I don't think the industry supports newcomers very well, and I think there needs to be a massive policy with Sony, NBC. If you've still got contacts with Disney and the rest of them, get onto them and tell them that, you know, graduate schemes, the BBC does a bit of it. So pay them better, promote them better, and
100%.
provide more opportunities, definitely.
Yeah.
And for our students, I just think, you know, it's they've got to live and breathe the subject. Certainly by their second year, they have to really love what they're doing. That's when they choose what modules they're doing, and they're going to progress in a particular pathway. We want them to love what they're doing, and yeah.
I think that idea of democratization of technology as well is really interesting, which is you don't necessarily have to wait to get a huge budget and get the most expensive camera. And look, cameras are great, and you should definitely get the best equipment you can. But your iPhone has some really amazing technology. We had a film that won a BAFTA, and it was just shot on an iPhone. You can do some amazing things just using a small amount of resource. And we had another film that earned several £100 on pause. That was a better camera. It wasn't an iPhone, but it was a 17-year-old kid, and he'd spent £36 as his film production budget. That's all he had was £36, and he spent it on this film and walked away with several £100 in I think it's like 660 or 700 in total in tips in a couple of days.
So Rishi, what made that then? What made it monetizable?
You know what? It's an interesting question. I don't know what makes independent films earn good money more than others. And if I knew the answer, I'd probably get some higher flying job and sell in my services that way. I think the one thing that all these films have in common is authenticity and originality in voice. And I think that speaks volumes, especially now in an age where most consumers are skipping between Netflix and Amazon and big streaming services that aren't looking at authenticity in voice, they're looking at commercialization. And the same with free platforms like YouTube. You know, you're as a content creator on YouTube, you're incentivized to focus on what makes good content for brands rather than your consumers. You want stuff that's going to rack up millions of views so that Adidas can come up with an advert before your content, rather than what your consumers really want. So it ends up being quite viral and clickbaity, right? You know, so yeah, I think if you're true to your own voice and you've got a unique story to tell, the issue with that traditionally is that sometimes being unique and original has smaller audiences.
Yeah.
You can only find your tribe. It might only be 1,000 people who really love what you're doing, and that was too small before. It's insignificant. Now 1,000 people, you can monetize 1,000 people very, very happily on pause and walk away with a decent amount of money to then fund your next project. So I think not only has it been that democratization of technology to be able to tell your story, but now we're democratizing the way in which you can monetize that story in a way that also provides good value to audiences as well, because look, you know, their behavior is not being tracked. We're not selling their data on. We're not giving them an advert. We're not putting up a monthly subscription. So yeah, it's that's how we see the future online economy.
I have a final question, because I think we could talk on, but I think we'll have an opportunity to talk to you again at another time.
Yes.
But we're talking about young creatives getting into a career.
Yeah.
Kind of, what are the career options for young graduates who want to get into the film industry? What are the career options as far as you're aware?
So by the way, I completely agree with the sentiment that entry level contributors to the creative economy are paid too little. So, you know, even me, you don't necessarily have to come from a creative background to work in the creative sector. My background, as I mentioned, was business and economics, but I just love film. And when I went in, I also had an MBA. When I went in, I was literally being offered intern level salaries when I could just literally go to a bank down the road and earn triple. And I didn't, so I went back and earned less. But I'm, you know, so incentivized to not work in the creative sector. What opportunities are there? So I think there are a ton of wider opportunities in the creative sector. You could be a plumber or a carpenter and be building sets for the next Star Wars film. But also, you know, if you're a playwright, you're a script writer, I think for TV and animation and film, there's a ton of opportunity. I'm going to be biased here and say some of the biggest opportunities are to do it, to go off on your own, and not necessarily as a full-time job if you don't want to, but to support a poor monthly income with your own creativity and start building your own brand and your own business based on your unique voice. So you can come off university straight away, make a piece of content, put it on pause, earn a few £1,000s, use some of that to make your next film, and keep building up the ladder whilst doing that in parallel with a full-time job, or make it your full-time job, you know, however you want to get by. But I think now is the best time for creatives to go into the workplace. There's more appetite than ever before. There's more demand. The creative industries is going to thrive online because more people are at home. So I think you have to be inventive. I think you've got the traditional runner moving up into different areas. You can also come from, you know, if you're an accountant but you love film, go into film financing. You know, I did that. I was an economist. I went into distribution because, you know, price points and all that kind of stuff. So I think, you know, there's a million opportunities in the creative sector, arguably not as well paid, but you can solve that problem or dilute that issue somehow by using online services like Pause and many others.
I think we just have to face the fact at the moment that it isn't that well paid. But from what you're saying there, and I completely agree, that, you know, in order to succeed, you have to believe in yourself. I know it sounds almost, you know, religious to say that, but you do. You have to believe that you can succeed. It's almost like casting it out there, going, I can, and I will, and I will, and to kind of just keep trying.
Absolutely.
Rishi, I think we're going to stop it there. I really appreciate you chatting with us today. And I suspect that our students will want to see much more of you. And I know you said that you're willing to come along and have a chat with them in their module. And we will set that up, because I think there's a lot of incentive that you can give them, you know, and hope, I think, as well, seeing you're just so well connected with the industry. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We'll see you again in the future.
Yes.
And stay safe.
And you, thank you so much, Deborah.